Hello boys and girls, and welcome back to story time. So we're not far from the end actually, so let's see what happens next then. Chapter 18 is called 1,000 Smiles. Where the hell are they? Yelled Mr. Hawtrey at no one in particular. The second half was about to begin, and Magdalen Street were all waiting on the pitch, eager to finish off their demolition job. The school's team was nowhere to be seen. Had they run away? Then, suddenly, Lisa stepped out of the changing room and held the door open. First, Gareth ran out wearing a gold lame ball gown. Then Darvesh followed in a yellow polka dot frock. Then the defenders were right behind in matching red cocktail dresses. The rest of the team followed in a variety of outfits from Lisa's wardrobe. And finally, Dennis came out of the dressing room in a pink bridesmaid's dress. And there they all are, look. All the boys in the dresses. There was a huge cheer from the crowd. Dennis looked at Lisa and smiled. "Go get 'em, kid," she said. And there's Lisa and Dennis. As they ran onto the pitch, Mr. Hawtrey bellowed at Gareth. "What on earth are you doing, boy?" "You expelled Dennis for wearing a dress, but you can't expel all of us, sir," he shouted back triumphantly. All the boys in the team lined up defiantly behind their captain, striking poses like they were dancing in a Madonna video. The crowd went wild. "This is a disgrace!" bellowed Mr. Hawtrey. He stormed off angrily, brandishing his walking stick/seat thing. Gareth smiled at Dennis. "Come on, boys, let's do this," said Gareth. The bemused referee blew his whistle before it fell out of his mouth. Within seconds, Dennis had scored a goal. The Magdalen Street team were in shock. They were still 6-1 down, but Dennis and his teammates were back in the game. "Woo!" shouted Darvesh as he hitched up his skirt and weaved around a defender. Laughing, Dennis scored again. He was on his way to a hat-trick, and he was 100 times happier than he had ever been. He was doing the two things he loved the most at once, playing football and wearing a dress. Then Darvesh scored, sliding across the pitch and adding a large grass stain to his frock as he sneaked the ball past the Magdalen Street goalie. 6-3. My boy in the yellow polka dot dress has scored," shouted Darvesh's mum. They were on fire. Dennis set up a fantastic cross for Gareth, who just had to tap it into the net. 6-4. Gareth, being Gareth, celebrated like his goal would be replayed forever on Match of the Day, doing 3 victory laps of the pitch and hitching up his gold lame ball gown as he ran. The crowd laughed and cheered. Then another goal followed, and another. 6-all. Now there were only a few minutes of the game to play. "One more to go, and they've done it." "Come on, Dennis," shouted Lisa. "You can do it." Dennis looked over at her and smiled. It would be really cool if I scored now, he thought, especially in front of Lisa, my future wife. But at that moment, Dennis fell to the ground in pain. The crowd gasped. One of the Magdalen Street strikers had nobbled him, kicked him right in the shin when he didn't even have the ball. Dennis lay there in the mud, holding his leg in agony. The referee had seen nothing. "He's putting it on, ref," protested the Magdalen Street boy. The crowd booed. Dennis was trying really hard not to cry. He opened his eyes and his vision swam. Lying there, grass pressing into his cheek, he peered up at the crowd. Through the tears, he glimpsed a red checkered jacket that looked very familiar. And then the red checkered jacket turned into a man. And then the man shouted in a deep voice that was even more familiar. "Oi! What's going on here?" Dad. Dennis couldn't believe it. Dad had never come to see him play for the school before, and now here Dennis was, lying on the ground with tears in his eyes, wearing a dress. He was going to be in so much trouble. But Dad looked at Dennis and smiled. "Oi, ref!" he shouted. "That kid kicked my son!" Dennis rose to his feet, his legs still glowing with pain, but a warm feeling spreading through him. He steadied himself, then smiled back over at Dad. You okay? Asked Darvesh. Yeah, said Dennis. Come on, son, shouted Dennis's dad, really getting into it now. You can do it! I called him at half-time, said Darvesh. After what you said about your dad never seeing you play in a match, I thought you wouldn't want him to miss this. Thanks, mate, said Dennis. Whenever he thought Darvesh couldn't surprise him any more, couldn't be a better friend, he went ahead and did it. Gareth tackled the ball off one of the Magdalen Street boys, and Darvesh ran up the outside, and Gareth passed to him. Magdalen Street charged towards Darvesh, and he passed back to Gareth. Gareth panicked for a moment, then passed to Dennis, who weaved straight past the defence before booting it right over the goalie's head and into the back of the net. The keeper didn't stand a chance. 6-7. The final whistle blew, and it was all over. And there's the boys, look, passing to each other, showing good teamwork. Yes! Shouted the crowd. Go on, son! Shouted Dennis's dad. Dennis looked over and smiled. For a moment, he thought he saw John's face in the crowd, but he couldn't be sure as everything seemed to blur in all the excitement. Gareth was first to go up and hug Dennis. Darvesh was next. Within moments, they were all hugging excitedly, celebrating their victory. The school had never even got to the semis before, and now they'd won the cup. Dad couldn't contain his excitement and ran onto the pitch. He scooped Dennis up into his arms and sat him on his shoulders. This is my son! This is my boy! Shouted Dennis, shouted Dad, helpless with pride. And there he is, look, on his dad's shoulders. The crowd erupted with cheers again. Dennis smiled 1,000 smiles. He looked down at Gareth, Darvesh and the rest of the team all wearing their dresses. There's just one problem, Dennis thought. I don't feel that different anymore. But he kept that thought to himself. Chapter 19, Dragged in the Mud. The Magdalen Street team and their supporters stomped off muttering things like fix, rematch and bunch of woofters. Gareth passed the gleaming silver cup to Darvesh to hold, and the crowd cheered. My son the footballer. And yellow is so your colour, exclaimed Darvesh's mum. Darvesh looked over at his mum and held the cup up to her. This is for you, Mum, he said. She pulled out one of her tissues and wiped a tear from her eye. Darvesh then passed the cup to Dennis. At that moment, Mr. Hawtrey reappeared. Not you, boy! But sir, implored Dennis, you are still expelled from this school. The crowd started booing. Matt took a toffee bomb-bomb out of his mouth and momentarily joined in. Even Miss Windsor allowed herself a little French revolutionary boo. Silence! And there was silence. Even the adults were scared. But I thought, said Dennis. Whatever you thought, boy, was wrong, snarled Mr. Hawtrey. Now get off the school premises before I call the police. But, sir... Now... Dad waded in. You're a right idiot, you, he said. Mr. Hawtrey was taken aback. No one had spoken to him like that before. My boy just won the cup for your school. My son Darvesh helped too, added Darvesh's mum. Dennis was expelled though, said Mr. Hawtrey, with a sickeningly smug smile. There he is, look, talking to Dad. You know what? I've got a good mind to shove that cup right up your what's-it, said Dad. Oh dear, he's more embarrassing than me, muttered Darvesh's mum. Look, Mr. Sims, and he's Dennis Sims, my son, Dennis Sims. Remember that name. He'll be a famous footballer one day. You mark my words. And I'm his dad, and I couldn't be prouder. Come on, son, let's go home, said Dad, as he took Dennis's hand and led him across the pitch. Dennis's dress dragged in the mud, but he held Dad's hand tightly as he sloshed through the puddles. Chapter 20, Blouse and Skirt. I'm sorry there's mud all over this, said Dennis as he handed back the bridesmaid dress to Lisa. It was later that afternoon and they were sat on the floor in her bedroom. Dennis, I'm sorry, I tried, said Lisa. Lisa, you were amazing. Thanks to you, I got to play in the final, and that's what really mattered. I guess I just need to find another school that might take me. The boy in the dress. Magdalen Street, maybe? Said Lisa with a smile. Dennis laughed. They sat in silence for a moment. I'm going to miss you, he said. I'm going to miss you too, Dennis. It's going to be sad not seeing you at school, but we can still get together at the weekends, can't we? I want to. Thank you for everything, Lisa. What have you got to thank me for? I got you expelled. Dennis paused. Lisa, I want to thank you for opening my eyes. Lisa looked down shyly. Dennis had never seen her look like that before. Well, thank you, Dennis. That's the loveliest thing anyone has ever said to me. Dennis smiled and his confidence grew for a moment. And I have to tell you something, Lisa. Something I've wanted to tell you for ages. Yes? I'm completely madly what? But he just couldn't say it. Sometimes it's hard to say the things that you feel. I'll tell you when I'm older. Promise, Dennis. I promise. I hope he does. We all have someone who, when we are near them, our hearts feel like it is in the sky. But even when you're a grown-up, sometimes it's hard to say the things that you feel. Lisa ran her hands through Dennis's hair. He shut his eyes so he could feel it more. On the way home, Dennis walked past Raj's shop. He wasn't going to stop, but Raj spotted him and came out of the shop to see him. Dennis, you look so sad. Come in, come in. What on earth is the matter, young man? Dennis told him what had happened at the football match, and Raj shook his head in disbelief. You know the irony, Dennis, proclaimed Raj. Those people who are so quick to judge, be they teachers or politicians or religious leaders or whatever, are normally up to far worse themselves. Maybe, murmured Dennis, half listening. Not maybe, Dennis, it's true. You know that headmaster of yours, what's his name? Mr. Hawtrey? That's it, Mr. Hawtrey. I could swear there's something strange going on with him. Strange? Asked Dennis, intrigued. I don't know for sure, continued Raj, but you see, he used to come in here every Sunday morning at 7 o'clock in the morning for his telegraph. Same time every week, on the dot. And then, after a while, he stopped coming in, and his sister came instead. At least, he said it was his sister. What do you mean? Well, I can't put my finger on it, but there's something very peculiar about that woman. Really? What? Come tomorrow at 7 o'clock and see for yourself. Raj tapped his nose. Now, do you want the other half of that chomp bar? I can't seem to shift it. And I'm going to leave that there, boys and girls, and then we'll finish it off, I think, tomorrow. Okay, bye.